Welcome to Sacrilegious Discourse.
I'm husband.
And I'm wife.
Together, we're reading the Bible for the very first time.
We grew up without religion and wanted to know what all the fuss was about.
Well, what have we learned so far?
That God is a dick, and apparently some people believe in talking donkeys?
We're not trying to pass ourselves off as experts.
Nope, we're just reading the Bible for the first time and giving our first take reaction.
If you'd like to join us in this venture, you might consider starting at episode 1.
Otherwise, jump in wherever you like.
All right, let's go read the Bible.
Yeah, let's get to it.
Hey wife, did you know that Anchor is sponsoring our show?
Really? Don't we use Anchor to distribute our podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts?
Yeah, and we are on just about every other platform available as well, thanks to them.
Why do we use Anchor as our podcasting service?
Well, they make editing and distributing our show a breeze.
What if one of our listeners wants to start their own podcast?
Then they should head over to anchor.fm or download the app to get started.
Awesome! You guys should go do that right now! Husband!
Wife!
Do you know what today is?
Today's Q&A.
Q&A Saturday!
I knew that was coming.
Yeah.
I know. It's a thing now.
It's a thing now.
Apparently.
Very apparent. So I thought we would do a Q about Abishag.
Abishag?
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 Do you know?
I don't remember exactly. I mean, I will as soon as you say it.
Okay, so you know how David was old?
Yes, I know how David was old.
And so
that was the girl that they brought to him. Yeah. Okay.
The virgin. The beautiful virgin.
Right. Yeah, no, I got it. I got it now.
Yeah. I thought we would ask some questions about her.
Okay.
And then answer some questions about her.
Yeah.
And then I also thought we would talk a little bit more about Bathsheba.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, sounds good.
The two topics are actually related.
Got it.
Okay?
Okay. All right, let's get into this Q&A.
Cool.
Hey wife, do you like coffee in the morning?
I sure do, husband. Morning, noon, night. Which reminds me, I need to add that to our grocery list because we're running low.
Wait, before you do that, check out the website ungodlybrew.com where you can purchase a pound of your favorite flavor of coffee.
What if I want more than 1 pound?
Either order a larger amount or better yet, get 10% off by setting up a subscription for every 2 weeks or a month or whatever works for you.
Did you set up something special for our listeners?
You know I did. Exclusive for our listeners, get an additional 10% off subscriptions by entering the code SACRILEGIOUSCOFFEE at checkout.
That's a hellishly good deal.
Ungodly Brew is hellishly good coffee.
Well, okay, so in my excitement to sing the jingle,
yeah,
I forgot to mention what chapters this is covering.
Oh, yeah.
And it's 1 Kings, chapters 1 through 5.
I think anybody paying attention, it was probably pretty easy, but hey, we got to stick to our things, you know?
Our things.
Got to do our things.
Yeah, I mean, what if you label this episode wrong, and you've done that before?
Right, and then somebody be like, wait, no, that said 1 through 5, not
God damn you!
27 through 95.
What the fuck?
Jesus.
Stupid.
What's wrong with him?
So dumb.
Yeah.
Get your shit together, people. So, Abishag. Let's talk about her name, for one thing.
Abishag?
Abishag.
Okay.
It's kind of an odd name to us, but that doesn't mean anything because, you know.
Yeah.
These aren't in our regular vernacular.
Right.
So.
When it comes to the Bible, nothing means anything.
Right. So, but there is meaning in her name, although it's unclear which of these combinations of words is what it translates to.
Okay.
It could mean ignorance of the father, or father's ignorance.
Okay.
Or father of wandering, or wandering father.
Got it.
And then I made sure to type LOLOL in my notes. So, but regardless of which of those it translates to, her name hints at a dubious parentage.
Got it.
Which is how she would end up at the whim of the state.
Got it. Okay.
So, the fact that David did not make Abishag his legal wife is explained as due to his refusal to exceed the traditional number of wives that kings were allowed, which was 18.
18. So, apparently, according to that, he had 18 wives.
Apparently.
So, because he couldn't exceed it, so therefore... Right. I thought, to be perfectly honest with you, I thought he had way more than that.
Well, okay. I dug that up, like, in the recesses of the interwebs.
Sure.
Like, the deep, dark back closet. I'll probably never be able to find it again.
Right.
most people argue over whether or not she was his wife or his concubine. Like, there's a lot of arguments both ways.
Okay.
But it seems to lean towards actually that she was his wife.
Even though they never got it on.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And I'll get to that in a minute.
All right.
You knew I would.
Yeah.
So, the fact that she was likely his wife, in spite of what I just said about the number of wives and that
right.
maybe she wasn't.
Yep.
The fact that she was his wife kind of gets into why when Adoniah was like, I want her, why that was such an insult.
Right, right.
Because she either would have lived the rest of her life as a widow.
Okay.
Or as the conquering king's wife or concubine.
Sure.
So either a widow or Solomon's person.
Right.
In his entourage.
Right.
Or harem or whatever.
Yeah.
So, I just thought that was interesting because there is so much contention, like Christians arguing back and forth among themselves and scholars offering evidence both ways, whether from history or from how they interpret the words actually written in the Bible.
I find it intriguingly weird, actually, that so many people ascribe so much power and meaning to the Bible when really, because of translations, time, and what have you, even the best of entries in there are riddled with errors and questions.
We're
because,
just left with so many questions.
Yeah, like the claim is that it's the Word of God and stuff, and like, well, no, it's just not. Like,
right,
at this
obviously.
point, it's literally been interpreted. I think I saw somewhere, like, overall, it's been interpreted over 14,000 times. And
don't even find that slightly unbelievable.
And if that is actually factually the case, then how are you supposed to believe anything in there?
Right.
Like, it's all just garbled shit at this point.
Right.
That's been refed through so many filters that it doesn't hold anything from the original text. So why would you claim that is your proof of God?
Right.
Or the Word of God or anything?
Right.
You know, like, it just doesn't mean anything at this point as far as legitimate claims to God. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I don't know. I just had to get that off my chest. Sorry.
No, I'm totally there with you. In spite of the controversy back and forth as to whether or not she was his wife or his concubine, a lot of scholars believe that she was made his wife because the quote warm his bed is usually meant to indicate matrimony.
Got it. Okay.
Because
I didn't know that.
Only a wife or a concubine could occupy his bed.
Okay.
But to warm his bed is usually words that were lent to a wife.
Got it.
So.
Okay.
So we should, based on that and based on when Adoniah wants to take her.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get into some of that in a bit.
Yeah.
That makes me tend to believe that she was his wife.
Okay. All right. Yep.
Now I'm going to get into a couple of words here that may or may not strike you, but they may come off a little bit off topic.
Okay.
So just bear with me.
Sure.
Okay. So there's a word bogeret.
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 Okay.
Which means adult daughter. And it's one who has reached the age of 12 and a half years and a day.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
So at 12 and a half years plus 1 day, you're an adult.
Okay.
Okay.
I disagree, but okay.
I mean, no, so do I. Okay. The Hebrew word used to describe Abishag's age is na'ara, which is the word that refers to girls who are no older than 12 and a half years old.
Okay.
So she was somewhere between 12 and 12 and a half.
Got it. Wow.
Prepubescent child is what they're referred to.
Yeah.
Is what that word means.
Okay.
And then, so during that time, she was an adult, but not allowed to go off with people.
Got it. Okay.
Okay? Mm-hmm. So this 70-year-old motherfucking man married a 12-year-old child.
Right. Yeah. That's
so,
gross.
Whether or not she was a wife or a concubine, whether the relationship was consummated.
Does it even fucking matter?
I wrote Solomon, but I meant David had a child climbing around naked in his bed.
Right.
That's disgusting.
Right.
Now, let's move on to the fact that the quote, I think, was he knew her not.
Okay.
And that meant that they didn't do it. They didn't have the sexes.
Right, right.
And there is also a lot of question about whether or not that is true.
Really?
Right.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Most scholars, however, believe that no, they did not have sex, and that was written in because it was not a statement of his chastity, like what we thought, like, oh, David was pure, even, he was so...
I didn't think that. I thought he had erectile dysfunction, remember?
He exactly had that. He exactly had that. It was to show readers exactly how old and feeble he actually was.
Yeah.
Because a man's power is closely linked to his virility.
Ah.
And so, by tradition, the well-being of the country depended entirely upon the physical capability of its monarch.
So let me get this straight. I just want to clarify what I understand to be true here.
Mm-hmm.
They're talking about a 12 to 12 and a half year old girl
mm-hmm.
who married a 70-year-old man who has erectile dysfunction,
mm-hmm.
and he only didn't have sex with her
because he wasn't able.
And they wrote that into the Bible
mm-hmm.
to prove that he wasn't strong enough to lead Israel.
Yeah.
Not that it was a bad thing that
right.
he married the 12-year-old,
right.
but that he couldn't have sex was a bad thing.
Well, this is one of the many cases that a lot of Republican Christians use
mm-hmm.
as to allow for children to be married away.
Wow.
Because there are still a handful of states where child marriages are legal.
Yeah.
And you do not need a parent's consent in most of them.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. And so there are some, like in the case of religious places.
Yeah.
Like communes or whatever they're called.
Right.
Don't need parents' permission in a lot of those. They just marry their daughters off.
Yeah.
In the case of a child being raped, will often be married off to a rapist.
Right.
So this is the case, one of the cases for that, when they are searching for a way to justify that disgusting pedophilia.
I think we need to cover at some point. We need to do like either a special episode or a Patreon episode about like some of the backward ass Christian laws that are in this country, because
mm-hmm.
some of them are absolutely disgusting
mm-hmm.
and wrong and like, how did we even let them put these things on the books? And who fucking wrote the... Like, I don't understand how you can write this stuff or think this stuff or say this stuff and think it's okay in any way whatsoever at any time in the last at least 1,000 years. I'm just saying,
so much love and hope for mankind. That's cute.
No, I don't. I can't fathom
right.
what goes through people's fucking heads. That's all.
Right.
I don't get it. It doesn't make sense to me.
Well, the whole forced birth thing with the fall of Roe v. Wade.
Yeah.
Is headed toward wanting to allow children to be married off.
Right.
So that disgusting men can have sex with young girls.
Sure.
And have it be okay.
Yeah.
It's basically trying to justify what they're doing in the dark and make it acceptable in the light.
Right.
And it's gross. So Solomon's hold on the throne was not initially strong enough for him to kill the very popular Adoniah. We did not really get that.
Yeah, I didn't either.
When we were reading it. But apparently Adoniah was very popular.
Okay.
And since he was the older brother, but by a concubine, not a wife, he was popular and the older brother, so he was expecting for himself that he was going to be king.
Got it.
So that's why he
just went ahead and claimed it. Right.
Because that would be easier than, trying to work things out.
Yeah, let's skip the fucking paperwork and I'll just go ahead and be king.
Right. So the fact that he was popular made it to where when Solomon became king, he had to let his half-brother live. Remember, he was like,
Yeah.
just behave the rest of your days and I'm
Right.
not going to come after you.
Yeah.
But he knew that was not going to work. So he had to have a really solid reason to have him executed.
Sure. So he set up a rule right off the bat. And
Well, I'm headed there.
Yeah.
I'm headed there. It is extremely unbelievable that Adoniah approached Bathsheba with a request to help him get Abishag as his wife. Which, remember, we said at the time, like, why the fuck would he ask her?
Right.
And why the fuck would she then be like,
so they
cool,
concoct. So you're saying they concocted the story then?
I'm saying that it is likely. I don't know for a fact. I wasn't there.
It would make sense that they concocted the story.
It would make more sense than the fact that Adoniah was just like, hey, Bathsheba.
I want to challenge the king and marry that girl over there.
Which, what I had said at the time was that if he did that, that would give him further claim to the throne.
Right.
Because the person who fucked with the previous leader's concubines and wives, his harem, that lent him power because, virility and sex and wiener.
Right. Yeah.
Wiener pride. So it's very much more likely that Bathsheba made this story up and told her son and told it publicly.
Okay.
So that he would have a solid reason. Solomon would have a solid reason.
Sure.
To then just execute him. No trial, no hearing, nothing. Just get him gone, call it done.
Okay. All
and
right.
that makes a lot of sense. I really like that theory because we questioned it at the time.
Yeah.
And we're not even scholars. We're dum-dums.
Right.
So that makes sense to me. What do you think?
I think, that sounds legit. I mean, that sounds like
intrigue.
Possible, reasoning, and the way it went down kind of sound like it almost sounds like her and was it Nathan? I think it sounds like they might have conspired to make this happen.
Yeah,
because they did plan.
They
planned how they were going to do it. So
in
the fact that they were already planning and scheming how to present this
to David before David died,
a lot of sense that maybe they were planning and scheming the whole fucking thing.
Yeah, I tend to think that.
So,
another thing is that. When Bathsheba went to the castle or what the fuck ever to hump David.
Yeah.
When that happened, so remember at the time I was like, that's gross. She didn't have a choice. She was, you know, taken and it was probably rape.
Right.
Well, there is some question about that. She might have actually gone willingly because the fact that there would have been so many people knowing that she went back and forth through the castle. It wasn't going to be a private affair. So when she got pregnant, like, everybody was going to know that it wasn't Uriah or what the fuck ever's child.
Yeah, fair enough.
So that doesn't necessarily mean that that she went willingly. But she might have been okay with it as an opportunist. Because if you look at her in the light of trying to make sure her son gets on the crown or gets on the throne, and helping him maintain that power, she's very wily.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, it put her and her son in a very good position.
What made her the queen mother?
Yeah,
and apparently, we haven't.
Which I don't quite understand exactly because he had multiple wives before he came across Bathsheba. So, like, how did her son end up being the second oldest? Because he had multiple, and like they announced.
I have no idea.
Like I don't. That makes no sense to me in the timeline of things. So
yeah, I have no idea how that works out.
And I didn't think to ask that until just now because whatever.
Yeah, I'd have to like see a chart, but but Bathsheba wasn't a concubine; she was a wife.
Right, but remember they listed off all those wives that he married, like boom, 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 and they had children. Like they said they had children. So like I'm like, what happened to all of them?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I really couldn't tell you. I mean, they might have stayed with their moms in the other countries that they came from because a lot of them were political marriages.
Got it.
So I don't know.
Yeah, whatever.
But be that as it may, she did become the queen mother, and as such had great power. And she was the first monarch, or the first woman to assume that role of queen mother, because this kingdom thing is still early stages.
Yeah, right.
So that's very interesting.
Yeah.
A couple more things. The story of Bathsheba was edited by court storytellers during the reign of her son Solomon.
Interesting.
So as they started telling the story of this,
so they made the history of Bathsheba.
They were the story was doubtless influenced by Bathsheba and her son.
Got it. Yeah.
So,
interesting.
We know only what they wanted us to know.
Right.
And also what they were forced to acknowledge because it was already public knowledge.
So what I'm gathering here is that she was kind of ruthless.
That is my impression. And I didn't want to think of her that way because to me, she was a victim.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I think that could still be the case, just being a woman in those times.
Yeah, yeah. No, but, I mean, now here's the other side of it. Like, they could have, maybe she's not ruthless. Maybe somebody uses her to be ruthless.
The way somebody used Abishag.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. So
I
don't know. That's also a possibility.
Right.
Because Nathan wasn't invited to the thing either, so maybe Nathan was using Bathsheba to influence David to get Solomon on there and then make things the way he wanted them to be.
Right.
He also had two sons that ended up being trusted advisors for Solomon once he made
that
king.
Is true. That is true. So Nathan ended up in a pretty light also.
Right, yeah.
So that's interesting.
Yeah.
So
I mean, just my 2 cents there.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think that any woman living during that time was a victim, but I also think that some had better chance to be opportunistic than others.
Sure.
And Bathsheba definitely ended up at the top of the heap.
Right.
So
yeah,
my feelings on her are a bit more ambiguous and gray.
Right, I gotcha.
So that's all I had for today.
Okay. Well, that was a good. I don't think I have anything much to add. It was, we covered some stuff that makes a little bit more sense now, and the Bible
is gross.
Is gross, yeah.
I mean, I think that says it all.
Right.
The Bible is gross, guys.
I still. So okay. We were talking earlier. Sorry, just one last thing here. We were talking earlier how the story of David and Abishag. Yeah, that one. We were talking how that people use that to justify weddings of young girls, even in the United States, right?
Yes.
I find it really, really odd that we take a story, any story, from the Old Testament to justify anything about fucking marriage when these people married so many goddamn people.
Right.
And, there was no rules defined for marriage at this time other than if you were, the shoe giving thing. There's some really weird traditions at this point.
Weird in our eyes.
Yeah, but there is certainly no one man, one woman. There's no defined role for what marriage looks like in the time of the Israelites.
Right.
I find it odd that these things are still used to justify those types of things. I find it odd that the Old Testament is used to justify any motherfucking thing.
True.
It's so archaic and stupid.
Right.
I just don't understand why.
It makes no fucking sense.
It really doesn't. Okay, that's it. I'm rant done. All right. So that was our Q&A for today. And tomorrow we will be back with
Sacrilegious Book Club. And then also the weekly replay.
Yeah, we'll be back with those. All right, we'll see you guys tomorrow.
Bye.
Hey, wife, I guess that's the end?
But husband, that's just sad.
It doesn't have to be. We are on lots of social media platforms like Twitter. Our handle there is sacrilegious_D.
For D's nuts.
Oh my God. Stop doing that. Anyway, we're also on Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest. There's a link to all of our social media sites at our website.
Ooh, we have a website?
Yeah, it's sacrilegiousdiscourse.com, where you can also find a link to our merch shop.
We have a merch shop?
Yep, we have podcast-themed clothing, mugs, notebooks, and more, as well as an atheist and science-themed products.
Wow, our fans should really go check that out right now.
Definitely. They can get in touch with us by sending an email to sacrilegiousdiscourse@gmail.com. But before they do that, we could really use some help.
Oh yeah? With what?
Well, it's not free running the podcast, and we need some financial support in order to get better equipment, which will free up time so we can concentrate on our podcast and our fans.
Okay, so what should they do?
Head over to patreon.com/sacrilegiousdiscourse and sign up as a contributor on our podcast. Supporters there receive additional bi-weekly episodes that we record just for our Patreon members for as little as $2 a month.
Also, we'd really appreciate it if you would like and subscribe on whatever platform you're using.
And Apple Podcast reviews help us out tremendously.
Like and subscribe. Leave an Apple review. Join us on Twitter. Support us on Patreon. That's a lot of instructions. Don't forget to say thanks.
Thanks.
Okay, bye.